Episode 4, Peculiarities, only sees a few deaths, and only one of them is caused by our blue-eyed protagonist, but it's going to hit you in the feels. So in this episode, we answer the questions. Does Fowler really think he can make a deal with God? What is it with the East and octopi? For freak's sake, leave the octopuses alone. Is Madame Kaji my new favourite badass? Why is Okemi still so annoying? Without further tussles in the snow, we'll be doing a quick plot recap in 3 minutes or less, then moving into character arcs, theme, action analysis, addressing some criticisms I've seen as they relate to this particular episode on YouTube, before ranking both the episode as a standalone and as a whole throughout the series. It shouldn't need saying, but there are major spoilers throughout the rest of this video.
Spoiler!
Okemi making a drink for Mizu, clearly with the East version of Rohypnol in it, is our first little teaser before we cut to the title card. And then to the dock, where our intrepid duo have just landed. A death duel is about to take place in the square and Ringo and Mizu go to watch. Mizu heads through town and into the red light district and stops by a brothel. She requests an audience with Madame Kaji. Once finished with a sort of sex tour, Mizu tells Madame Kaji she offers services too, and they strike a deal. Kaji's target is first thought to be Boss Hamata, who owns the gambling house. He also controls the Thousand Claw army. Half of what the brothel makes in profits is forced to Hamata's empire, and if anyone declines, human jerky. Mizu targets turn out to be not Hamata, but actually her protege, Kinyeyo. Kinyeyo is a deaf and mute girl whom Kaji took under her care from her abusive father. She grew to trust Kaji, and Kaji likens her to a daughter. Kaji wants Mizu to take her out as an act of mercy. After resting to prepare, we're back to Okemi serving poison tea. Meanwhile, Okemi's father works out she has bolted and sends guards out to track her down. Now, Okemi has been searching everywhere for Taigen, and we flash from her search, including avoiding the guards now hot on a trail, to Heiji and Fowler at the fortress, torturing Taigen, who refuses to give them any information.
Boring. I'm bored.
I like it. You will tell me everything you know about Mizu.
Go, Taigen. I knew you were alright, really. Fowler, bored, goes for supper and, walking past an obviously unused chapel, tries to bargain with God. After much searching, Okemi gets lucky and sees Mizu from across the square at the death duel. She ends up at the same brothel, and when she's walking through, there's the whole octopi scene. Seriously, guys, leave them alone. But we do get some fab stuff from Kaji. Funny enough, Kaji knows Okemi is a highborn noble. One of the girls suggests she turn to Watori the walrus. Okemi intellectually stimulates him enough that it actually does the trick. The others in the brothel are impressed. Flying high, Okemi then crosses paths with Mizu in the latter's room. Mizu knows exactly who Okemi is, and it ends with Mizu tying up Okemi and tasking Ringo to watch over her, while she herself attends to her mission. Mizu shows up in the middle of the night to see Kinyoru, holding her close and snapping her neck. She poses the scene so it looks like her assistant killed her, and she fought back before leaving. On leaving, she is seen by a small boy who she tells to run and get the night watchman. With the deed done, Kaji hands over instructions to Mizu. As the episode closes out though, Mizu finds herself surrounded as Boss Hamata shows up at the brothel with his army, intending to burn everything down. In Peculiarities, we are introduced not just to Madame Kaji, but also to her brothel, and Madame Kaji becomes a recurring character from this episode on. From her dismissal of Okemi,
Girl, just like that, you've been bought and sold. Fast as a marriage.
My name is Okemi.
I'll bother to remember that if you're still here tomorrow.
to her talking about the nature of men.
Under the law, revenge is a luxury for men like you. Women like me must be practical. We must focus on our result.
Please don't misunderstand. Madame Kaji is not saying all men, but the men that she comes into contact with running a brothel known for its, peculiarities. Interesting is the modulation of her voice when we first meet her and she takes Mizu on a tour describing sex as an art.
I understand not one of my girls caught the gentleman's interest. If it is boys he is after, he need only ask. Many famous samurai prefer the stamen to the pistol.
Madame Kaji's tea house is known for catering to peculiarities.
Nothing desired is peculiar.
This juxtaposes with the harshness in her tone when talking about Fowler and Heiji.
Enough times to know you never want to. He's a man who began life taking pleasure in others' pain. Boredom has only made him experimental. Some men's eyes say plainly they've tasted human flesh. Raw.
She's no soft mother figure, but it's obvious that she cares about those in her charge, even if her love is sometimes delivered harshly. Her desire for the mercy killing of Kinyoyu and how you can hear her crying when she leaves Mizu alone to prepare is heartbreaking. This is one tough lady hardened by the harsh realities of life in this world. So to hear this softness and then see her physically sadden when Mizu tells her that it is done and that Kinyoyu understood is incredibly tragic. Especially as we, the viewer, know that Kinyoyu did not understand. Tough, fair and concerned with keeping those in her care safe, there are such a lot of lines to choose from, but for me, I think it's this.
But every man I've seen who couldn't come till someone bled, you'd wear your blade to a stump.
Barely featuring in Peculiarities is one of my favourite characters, Taigen, although the impact character development for him is unreal for about one line, which really sticks with you. Our dear arrogant young samurai is strung up almost in a crucifixion style, which then links brilliantly into Abijah trying to make a deal with God after he says he's bored. His resolute will, loyalty and sense of honour preventing him from spilling the beans on Mizu. I think this speaks to something in all of us and is part of Taigen's redemption arc. His only line?
Humiliated you. He ruined your marriage into the Tokunobu clan. Why suffer so much to protect an enemy?
He deserves better than you.
Our hero of the last episode has a few key scenes which still serve to broaden his character, from his excitement and then shock at the death duel in the square, through to his realisation of what apprentices do. However, he is unable to keep his game face on for more than a few seconds and then apologises to Akemi when she accuses him of staring. Our naive Ringo's best line, however, is this.
Ringo, this will be some time. If you'd like to explore the harbour...
An apprentice should stay with his master.
Well, let's talk villainous villains. And whilst the deal with God monologue discussed in a bit fleshes out Abijah, it is Heiji who I felt turned from half evil to full-on special place reserved in hell with his own parking spot evil. And someone you'd want to see dead, preferably painfully. I'm a bit disappointed in Mizu for not finishing the job in episode 3. This comes not just from the torture scene, which is hideous enough, and I found quite shocking, but from Madame Kaji and her reaction to Mizu when she brings up his name. It's subtly done, but you can tell from her reaction that he has more than raised a hand to her.
You met Heiji Shindo. Perhaps he laid a hand on you. If it was his right hand, consider yourself avenged.
Whilst torturing Taigen, he callously states that he likes it, and then the way he calls out each torture instrument before the pain is delivered to Taigen is gruesome, and unfortunately his worst and best lines.
He will hit you with a fist. He will hit you with a club. He will hit you with a hammer. He will cut you with a knife.
Fowler's monologue in the chapel and bargaining with God is expertly done, and his declaration that he knows they're not friends seeks to show that whilst he's not religious and hasn't been in there in 10 years, there is likely some form of religious background.
I never asked them to build this. They just assumed the white man required a chapel and put it by the dungeon. We're not friends. I haven't spoken to you in some time. Wouldn't do you the dishonor of asking for a favor.
Once again, it is Madame Kaji that gives you an even deeper insight, as if we needed it, into exactly how depraved he is when she talks about him eating human flesh raw.
Has only made him experimental. Some men's eyes say plainly they've tasted human flesh. Raw.
Visually, they use a spider, which you wholly expect him to crush before leaving the chapel, and he doesn't, letting it go on its merry way, probably because he recognised a kindred spirit. I'd love to play the whole monologue, even if it was only the subtitles and no audio, but unfortunately copyright, so we'll stick to the bit with the spider and consequently a very evil line from our Northern Irish bar steward.
And hand you a nation of souls. My thanks, if you see fit. It's no matter to me either way. I've got no use for souls.
Well, I'm still not a fan of Akemi, and whilst I respect the girl's game, she is incredibly manipulative and singularly focused on her own needs and wants. Her interactions with Mizu, however, do a great job of contrasting their positions. She manipulates her way into the brothel, although Madame Kaji does not seem fooled, but her constant stating that no one refuses her and blatant use of sexuality and wit with the walrus did more to make me dislike her as a character than win me to her side. She's playing dress-up and play acting in this world, whereas everyone else is doing it to survive, and I don't think she loves Taigen. He's just her ticket out of a bad situation. She has swanned through life with flattery and beauty.
Now it is some essential part of the soul that draws men to brothels, when it's only naked flattery. Do men usually fall for this?
The ones I've known. Yes.
Her little road trip was not about love, but more petulance of not being able to get her way. Let's see if she can redeem herself in the future. She is quite insightful with mizu though, which forms one of her best lines. Just for the record, I picked up no sexual tension between these two, something often stated in fan sites, and I'll cover that in criticisms later.
Just go.
I thought you had to be something special. Your face isn't even so scary. You're just angry.
We see both the light and dark in Mizu's character in this episode, from her giving money to the performers on the docks to her singularity of purpose when talking about Fowler.
My customer.
Because he deserves to die.
There's also the interesting complicated Facebook relationship status where she envisions Tigan. On the brothel tour when they are talking about desire and the heart. The whole Peep Show tour seems a little bit of an enlightenment for her, that sex can be an art. I do not think she believes Madame Kaji though. She's also completely not fooled by Akemi's attempts to drug her, and her contempt and disdain for Akemi's privilege is clear.
Women in our world don't have a single good option. Except you. Like some magical forest creature. You could have anything you want. And then you beg to eat trash.
When she talks about how she is a blessed forest creature, but she still lets her go. When she kills the bird, primarily through instinct and reaction, she gently lays it back on the nest, even though of course she must realise those eggs will never hatch. Mizu demonstrates she is not a cold-blooded killer, and whilst her determination for her revenge is clear to see from her interactions with Madame Kaji, unlike Heiji and Abijah, she doesn't hurt or kill anyone for fun or pleasure. During the mercy killing of Kinyo, she holds the girl for far longer than she needs to, and is physically overcome when getting down to street level by what she has done. Did she do the right thing, albeit for the wrong reasons? I think she's put in an impossible position. She also does not kill the child, even though she swore to Madame Kaji that there would be no witnesses, and that she would be like smoke. And it is this loose morality that leads the 1,000 Fangs, which is 125 men, to her door. Best line is to Akemi.
I see why he likes you. You're just like Tigan when we were children. A fucking brat.
We're introduced to action in the initial samurai death duel, which is over in a matter of seconds, and after a bit of research seems like it was fairly common. However, some fights duels could last for much longer. Our blue-eyed protagonist praises the surviving samurai's technique.
The painter's signature. Immaculate.
We then have the 2 attacks by Akemi, silly girl, on Mizu, who is quickly overpowered and tied up, which helps to heighten the sense of tension between them, including Mizu's distaste for Akemi. The choreographing of the lead up to the mercy killing gave me Assassin's Creed and old-style ninja vibes from video games. I may have wasted an excessive portion of my youth on these, with Mizu hiding in the shadows and parkouring her way up and down the building. Whilst it wasn't a full-on fight fest in this episode, I still think it was well done. Parkour! And the ending sees Mizu in a how the fluff are you going to get out of this one situation, against 125 opponents. That's if the full 1,000 Fangs are there. Thematically, an incredibly strong episode about survival, sacrifice and sexuality. All of this with the lovely linking into the bird symbolism on the title card. Madame Kaji's could be renamed the Birdhouse, from the peacocks and phoenixes on her kimono, through to the sumptuous wallpaper displayed in the rooms, to the phoenix symbol that Mizu carves into candle smoke. And then, of course, sadly, the accidental killing of the bird. Coincidentally, also looks like the same species that is seen on the branches in episode 1 when Mizu was training, and it made the ultimate sacrifice as it was trying to ensure the survivability of its yet unhatched young. There are birds everywhere. Then there's the strong depiction of Madame Kaji and the girls who operate in her brothel, who are all just trying to survive. And I loved the realism and brutality of that opening sword fight, to the honest telling of events by Fowler when he uses these lines.
Godless here as long as they've been. You saw what they did to your priests and faithful, kicked out and crucified the word dead in their mouths, unspread. Heathen, surely these Japanese. Lucky for you, their man in charge is greedy.
Christianity and any other religion were nastily kicked out of Japan with a huge fire on a bridge in Edo, modern-day Tokyo, where at least 50 Christians, including women and children, were burned alive. Crucifixion was another common, albeit ironically brutal way that Christianity was dealt with in the Edo period. The creators don't shy away from talking about these events, And it's never a case of white men bad or Japan good, which with Western sensibilities as they are, makes a refreshing change. They lay out the historical details and accuracy as a framework or set of rules to tell their story. We know it's not supposed to be a historical epic accurate to a nanosecond. This is folklore, mythology, wrapped into the best tradition of pulp stories, video games, with a bit of the supernatural thrown in. But the very close to real-world history gives it a realism which takes it beyond traditional animation. The exploration across the breadth and depth of the themes, both dark and light, are given weight by this very accuracy. This period, even today, is still referred to as Japan's Golden Age, and it was gorgeous, sumptuous and beautiful, whilst also being racist, xenophobic, ableist and absolutely bloody brutal for both sexes, and in lots of different ways. Even the kink is periodically accurate, with our poor Molos friend. With this tale and painting being very popular apparently at the time, I recommend you don't Google sex with octopi and historical Japan, because you will end up with tentacle porn. I think the most unexpected thing in this episode was the mercy killing, with Mizu left with absolutely no choice but to kill her if she wanted to achieve her revenge. It's a sacrifice of sorts to her goal, a very real human one. Here is where we see survival as a theme come back to the fore, with Kanoyu simply wanting to stay alive, which is why I think she doesn't respond to the sign. It changes what you think of Mizu, who isn't a traditional hero or even anti-hero. She is something else. And as I know what's coming in episode 5 in terms of visual framing and themes, hang on to your hats. Well, without wanting to restart the Troubles, I've seen a lot of criticism around the fact that Abijah Fowler is Northern Irish and describes himself as British. Well, that's because a lot of Northern Irish see themselves as British rather than Irish. And this is because during the 16th and 17th centuries, the most isolated and undisturbed part of Ireland was transformed by immigration from Britain. The narrow North Channel separates northeastern Ulster from southwestern Scotland, whereas in the Middle Ages there had been a significant eastward migration of people from Ulster to Scotland. A pronounced westward flow of Scots to Ulster began in the 16th century. This was followed by an influx of English and Scottish Church of England and Protestants in the 17th century. I've seen all sorts of theories on this as to how Abijah wants to colonise because he was colonised, etc, etc. But I don't think these people understand what the word colonise means. British settlers were in the most undisturbed and empty part of Ireland, and they were predominantly Scottish and then English. Abijah Fowler wants to destroy this culture that has kept him trapped like a slave for 20 years. It has nothing to do with colonisation, and more to do with the burning hatred of Japanese society. It's the same with the scene in the chapel. This has got nothing to do with colonisation. Again, it's got to do with destroying Japanese society, and because he thinks he might get something out of it by making a bargain with God. Akemi Mizu would be more than friends, and there's sexual tension between them. I'm going to sigh quite loudly at this because it's tosh, a massive amount of copium, and 3-page essays on Reddit do not change the very real animation and somewhat contempt that Mizu holds for Akemi. Probably with a hint of jealousy because she's sexually attracted to Taigen. Then there's also this piece of interview that's been taken wildly out of context. Point 1, he doesn't say they are going to kiss. He's just playing on the fact that people want a second season. It should be noted that this interview was before Netflix had signed off on the deal. Point 2, nowhere does Michael state that the love triangle is going to be between Akemi, Taigen and Mizu. I just wish we could put this to bed. No pun intended, obviously. But for now, let's talk ranking. I was genuinely shocked by Mizu killing Kanoyu, and I loved the exploration of survival, sexuality and sensuality, which, whilst sort of graphic, isn't overdone. So I'd give this one a solid 9 in terms of ranking. So where does it fit into the larger scheme of things? I'd go episode 3, followed by 1, followed by this, Peculiarities, and 2 sitting pretty at what is actually a high bar. If you've made it this far, as always, thanks for watching, and please remember to like, subscribe and comment if you enjoyed this. That's all from this videograph for today. See you in the next one.